Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my game review, the first game review of the season for Boise State versus Georgia Southern. Boise State winning this game 56-45. Before we get started here, shout out to Kevin Whitehead 6367 for getting the closest score prediction. Nobody was close. I wasn't close. I was predicting 37-23. There were a lot of you that said 56 points, which of course you'd have been right there, but then your score for Georgia Southern was somewhere between 20 and 10. So a lot of people were completely off. I thought, and I had to use a little bit of just kind of subjective analysis here, I thought that Kevin's prediction was the closest. He predicted a 44-30 point spread. Pretty close, I think, on both sides of it. Again, a little bit off, but the higher point score prediction for Georgia Southern, and then the slightly lower, but a good, high point score prediction for Boise State as well. So congratulations, Kevin, on being the winner this week. You win my respect. I'm not giving out any kind of prize or anything for this, but there's the shout out. He also said, watch Jeanty go. So very accurate predictions there, Kevin. Congratulations. Hope you get it again next week. And again, everybody, you are welcome to give those score predictions every single week in the game previews. And if you're the closest one, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more easier to determine the winner next time. But again, if you're the closest one, you'll get that shout out in the video. I do want to do one more thing before we start. I want everybody to say after me, I will not overreact to a Game 1 performance. Okay, ready? I will not overreact to a Game 1 performance. We're going to break it down. We're going to go through the offense, the defense, the special teams. We're going to grade each of these units like we always do. We're going to talk about the highlights. We're going to talk about the negatives. We're going to bring both of them together and say, what is this team going to look like going forward, at least into next week, potentially during this season. And then at the very end, we'll also look at how Boise State performed against my keys to the game. So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to analyze and break down. But at the same time, Week 1 performance, okay? We don't know how good Georgia Southern is. We don't know how bad Georgia Southern is, potentially. We have no idea what the comparative levels of these two teams are. So keep that in the bigger picture, and let's try and be as objective and fair as we can when analyzing the performance for all elements of this team. I also want to hear from you on what you thought this game, what your thoughts were on this game, what got you the most excited. Obviously, Jeanty's a big one, so if you want to say that, you can, but most people will, so maybe be a little more creative than that. But what got you the most excited from this Week 1 game, and then also what has you the most concerned, and at the end of the video we can compare notes and have that discussion, and I want to have that with each and every one of you. I always try to reply to every comment on every one of my videos. So, all right, let's get right into it. Starting with the offense, and I'm not going to go necessarily drive-by-drive, play-by-play breakdown. This is not going to be an hour-and-a-half video where we go through every single thing that Boise State did, but just some big picture level wave cap levels here for Boise State. Obviously, the biggest one that stands out is Ashton Jeanty. What a performance by Ashton Jeanty. School record 6 touchdowns in this game. He had 20 carries for 267 yards. 13.4 yard average, 6 touchdowns, like we already said, and then he also caught a few catches for only 4 yards. So not as big a threat in the receiving end like we've seen through previous times when he's been out on the field. So maybe that'll be a little bit more of a focus next week versus Oregon. I'm sure the screen game will be a big emphasis item for Boise State. So not as heavy an impact in the passing game, but almost every time they handed this ball off to him, he was going for 10 to 70 yards. He had 2 70-plus yard touchdowns. He opened up the game, second drive of the game with a 75-yard touchdown, and then he had another 70-yard touchdown when Boise State needed it the most. They really needed a touchdown to retake the lead there, and he was able on drive number 3 of the second half to go get a 75-yard touchdown for Boise State. So huge game by Ashton Jeanty. He looked like he was playing in the new NCAA football game, the new EA Sports football game on freshman mode. He had a couple of just video game performance runs, breaking multiple tackles. Obviously, that first 75-yard touchdown run. He also had another one on drive number 4 where he ran to the right side and then he broke 3 or so tackles and came back to the left side. There was another run where he, for a first down, just stiff-armed the living daylights out of a couple of defenders. Ruthless. I was out of my seat screaming when he had those stiff arms. So Boise State, with Ashton Jeanty at the helm, he has clearly kicked off his Heisman campaign. Everybody across Twitter was taking notice and tweeting it out. I'm sure it's going to be a discussion on game day. Boise State definitely caught the eye of the national limelight with Ashton Jeanty's Week 1 performance. Again, he had an incredible performance overall. However, another player that had an amazing Week 1 performance here for Boise State is Sire Gaines. We didn't see Dubar in this one. He wasn't lined out on the depth chart, so nothing official coming from Boise State. But obviously, he was a big part of the running game last year, even with Helani and Jeanty in the mix coming in as that RB3, and when Helani was out, spelling Jeanty. And he seemed to have a good camp. And we knew Sire Gaines was great, and he was going to be a heavy role, but we didn't see Dubar at all. So the question, of course, becomes, is there an injury? I know the Shirts and Skins guys were saying that they thought maybe there was, not that anything was specifically said, but they were saying, like, the body language from the coaches at the press conference maybe indicate that. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate too much on that, but we didn't see Dubar in this, but we did see Sire Gaines, the true freshman. And again, can I say it again? The true freshman looked nothing like a true freshman. I have never seen a true freshman run like this. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty looked incredible right off the bat as well, but I mean, he wasn't going off in his first game and having 110 yards rushing, 9.2 yard average, and a touchdown. And I'm not saying that right now Sire Gaines is as good as Ashton Jeanty, but the future is certainly bright with Sire Gaines. He did have, had a couple freshman moments. He had a fumble that Austin Bolt was able to recover late in the second half. We'll talk about that here in a second. But overall, anytime you handed him the ball, you knew he was going to be able to go and have a big performance, just like Ashton Jeanty. You felt pretty secure overall with him running that. Maybe not so much on like a fourth down play that maybe shouldn't have been a decision to go for it. We'll talk about that again in a second as well. However, overall, Sire Gaines, very impressive. He also had 3 receptions for 44 yards, so his overall stat line was 355, and he also had another touchdown. So first game performance for Boise State in a tough environment against a Georgia Southern team that, defensively, that's not a great team per se. I thought they were going to be a little bit better with 8 defenders coming back, but against the run last year, they gave up over 160 yards rushing per game, so, this was not necessarily their specialty, but still, a tough environment, a sold-out crowd against a team that does not lose very much on the road, at home, has had some big wins at home, and Boise State managed to come in here and get a huge win right off the bat to start their season. So fantastic job here for Boise State, and for Sire Gaines, though, to come in and start off the season that way was absolutely incredible in front of a very tough environment. So Boise State overall in this offensive performance, really, really solid from the rushing game for them. 371 yards total rushing. The first half they had 182, and they were able almost to match that in the second half, 371, so about another 100 yards rushing in the about another 100, and I'm totally losing my math abilities right now. 190 yards-ish rushing in the second half. So for Boise State, dominant rushing performance, what we expected. It was not, however, because Boise State was running a rush-only offense. Actually, this was a pretty balanced attack overall for Boise State in this Week 1 opener. Not necessarily something that I expected. I think we saw them shifting more to the running game, especially in the second half when they noted that was their strength, and obviously when they're trying to kill the clock a little bit there. But early on, especially in the first half, and even at moments in the second half, this was very much more of a balanced attack, and even at times on certain drives, pass heavy in some instances. Maddox Madsen did a good job controlling this offense. It wasn't necessarily a record-breaking performance, and there are still going to be many in the fan base that will continue to question the coaching decision, and will probably do so for the end of time. There's some people in the fan base that will not be convinced either way that Maddox Madsen should have started the season, and he didn't necessarily calm all of those fears and concerns, but he had a really good Week 1 performance. He had 22 completions out of 31, so really nice overall completion rate. 280 yards, a touchdown. Did have an interception. Actually had 2 interceptions, but one of them won't appear on his stat line because it was on a 2-point conversion. And you can argue situational has to force the ball in that case. But overall, I thought he made some really nice quick reads. I wrote that down for drive number 3. I really liked his quick passing game. Now, obviously, drive number 3 is also the game where he didn't complete a 4th down conversion, but it's also not a position that he should have been put in. We'll come back to Maddox in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about this. The 4th down conversions. Overall, offensive, I thought Dirk Cutter called a pretty good game, but also for a guy this experienced, maybe he's a little overconfident. And that's, you don't want to necessarily question one of the greatest offensive coordinators in the game right now and the experience that he has, but I think he might be a little overconfident because you come in there in that first half, drive number 3, you just scored a 75-yard touchdown run. You're not in a position where you got to go score a touchdown. You've got Jonah Dalmez, who is one of the greatest kickers in college football history, let alone school history. He can definitely hit what would have been about a 50-yard field goal, and on 4th and 1, they decide to go for it. Okay, fair. You got Ashton Jeanty, just scored a 5-yard touchdown run. They haven't been able to stop him. Hand the ball to him. He'll make a first down. No, they get too tricky with it, try to throw the ball, incomplete, unable to complete that. And so Max Matson not performing well in that instance, but also not a situation he should have been placed in. And then second half, also another 4th and 1. Drive number 1, this was a really, really bad decision for Dirk Cutter and the offense here because Georgia Southern was on a roll at this point. They scored a touchdown to end the half. They'd scored another touchdown to start the half. So they were 2 touchdowns in at this point, building some momentum. And on 4th and 1, inside of Boise State's own 30, I mean, the 35, it was really close to Boise State's end of the field. They go for it on 4th and 1 with Jeanty not in there, gets spelled by Sarah Gaines, who's had a great performance, but 4th and 1 in that position, you want your best running back. If you're going to make that call, you want that your best running back not able to make that. So a couple of questionable decisions overall for Dirk Cutter here, but again, called a pretty nice game, and it really played to Max Matson's strength. Again, obviously leaning on that running game, letting Ashton Jeanty do his thing, but then the passing plays that we did see out of Max Matson were nice short passes, screen plays, flat plays for the running backs, out routes, hook routes, really, short to mid-range most of the time for Boise State. Max Matson reading those well. The wide receivers were very, very, very good in this game. We know that this wide receiver class is deep. There are some guys stepping up that we maybe didn't even expect to be in the rotation necessarily as some of the top guys, and they had great performances. Boise State's wide receiver core was fantastic. Caples led the team, which is great to see. Led the team a couple of years ago and then got injured. Coming back from injury, 5 receptions for 81 yards, 16.2 yard average, long of 36. Camper, who had some very Pettis type vibes about him in some of his catches, caught a nice catch in traffic, caught another catch for a 2-point conversion in the back of the end zone that he really had to reach for. He had 3 receptions for 78 yards and a long of 53. Cameron Bates, the freshman, the true freshman, getting involved, had a couple of nice catches for 18 yards. Ben Ford, the local product, his first catch of his career in this one. You had 4 Boise State players make their first Boise State reception. Ben Ford had 1 reception for 9 yards. And then Chris Marshall, a little underutilized in this one because, again, the passing game wasn't necessarily the number one focus. But Chris Marshall had a couple of nice grabs, including one where he had, defender right on him. He had to reach back behind him. It was not a good throw by Max Matson, one of the few that he did not put in a good place. Had to reach back behind him and made an amazing grab. And, of course, Louder with 2 receptions for 13. So, overall, good job of distributing the pass, making quick decisions. You didn't call on Max Matson to be the deep strike every time, highlight reel, ESPN top 10 playmaker. He can go out and make some plays like that. He did in this game. But that's not necessarily why you call him out there. You call him out there because he's experienced with this offense. He had a lot of experience coming back from last year, and he's able to make a quick read, and most of the time, it's the right one. Did he miss a couple wide open receivers? Yeah. He also completed some passes on those that were a first down, so, take what you get. But, yeah, did he miss a couple guys? Sure, he did. Would Malachi Nelson, a little bit lower awareness, would have seen them? Who knows? You can't argue what you didn't see, but you can argue what you were able to see in this game, and that's what Max Matson had a really nice performance overall. Again, did he miss a couple players? Sure. Did he throw an interception when he was forcing it on that third drive there where it was kind of stalling out? They balled up Ashton Jeanty on one of the few times they did that. Forces a bad play? Yes. But did he come back from that in a huge way? Drive number 4 for Boise State after Max Matson throws an interception. One of the few times that he's gone out there and thrown the ball, throws a pick across the middle, could have crushed him. There's already so much negativity swirling around Max Matson right now. I know that teammates have just told him, just get off of social media. There's nothing good on there that you're going to see. So, Max Matson, at so much negativity swirling around him right now from the national media, but from the fan base, which, that's got to hurt the worst, is when those that are supposed to be behind you don't have any faith in you. So much negativity out there, so much pressure. Who's behind you as well. 5-star recruit there who's probably pretty close to being ready. He just didn't end up developing quite enough of the offseason, but what he has the potential to do. So there's a lot of pressure on Max Matson's shoulders, and as you usually see, he performs best when the pressure is the highest. So he's already got all this pressure on him, then he goes and throws an interception. And the next drive, what's Boise State going to do? Just run the ball, kind of take it out of his hands, maybe let him settle down a bit? No, they go after the throat of Georgia Southern with a deep pass. That's the 50-yard plus pass that we were talking about to Camper on the boundary, which was a beautiful throw right in front of him. Great throw on the right side. And then the next play, Caples made just an incredible catch on this, but it was also, put the ball where your guy can make a play, right at the 36-yard bomb, and he goes up and makes an amazing play. And for me, I'm not saying that Max Madsen is Kellen Moore. Again, don't overreact to week 1, right? So I'm not saying, I want to make that very, very clear. I do not think that Max Madsen is Kellen Moore. I do not. I just wanted to get that out there. But that performance, any diehard Boise State fan will remember, first road start for Kellen Moore versus Oregon, throws an interception. Georgia Southern's coming back into the, Oregon is coming back into the game. They go down and they score. Next drive, Kellen Moore, deep pass, Vinny Peretta, touchdown, right? This had those feelings. Again, not the same level of throws, but that had those feelings. Max Madsen coming back from a bad decision, resetting himself, and making a couple of huge plays to take his team from the 10 to the 1 in 2 plays and on 2 perfect throws that Boise State's able to punch in for a touchdown. It brought back those feelings, and it showed the guts and the strengths that Max Madsen has, the mental strength that he has to overcome tough situations and perform when his team needs him most. He's not the reason Boise State won this game. Jeanty won this game. 6 touchdowns by himself. It was all over the field there. Like we said, almost 300 yards rushing. Jeanty is the reason Boise State won this game. But Max Madsen did a lot of things to put Boise State in a position and to help this team out. And especially coming back after that interception, it was huge. Is there more that we can see out of him? Does he have more to develop here throughout the season? Of course he does. But week 1 performance, just the 1 recorded pick, touchdown, almost 300 yards passing out of 22 receptions. Found his open guy most of the time. Really, really strong performance here for week 1. So for Boise State, overall, really strong performance from the guy stepping up in the wide receiver room, which we knew was super deep. The running back room, which we knew was going to be exciting. We were excited about Gaines, but I didn't expect him to have 100-plus yards rushing, especially on the day that Jeanty almost goes out and gets 300 by himself. And so for Boise State in this game, offensively, I'm going to give it a solid A. Take away those 4th down decisions and not make those 4th downs. It's probably an A+. It's close. It's close to an A+. 56 points. If Boise State can score 56 points every game, they'll win every game. But they're probably not going to do that, which is why, moving on to the defense, we need this section to get better because Boise State can't go out and score 56 points every game. Definitely not going to do it versus Oregon. And there's a few other teams along the line that they're not. The defense is too good. Jeanty can do his thing. The passing game can improve, but you're not going to see a 56-point, we're not going to see Plows 50-plus every time on the scoreboard. So, which obviously never materialized, but, obviously reminiscent back to old sayings. So, defense. Boise State, I talk about tales of two halves here. Offense, pretty consistent all the way through. Shut down Jeanty a little bit at the start of the second half, but then he came back and they weren't able to stop him. Second half, defense though, second half, completely different grades. If we're just looking at the first half, really strong performance for Boise State. First half, 175 yards total, 111 yards passing, 64 yards rushing. I didn't write it down, but I believe it was 18 points at the half. So really overall, very strong first half performance, and one of those touchdowns was right on the last drive. They forced a fumble right off the bat in the drive number 2. Aaron McCoy forced a fumble. Tubner recovered it. Freely got a sack. Boise State overall did a pretty good job of forcing pressure. I thought maybe a step up from last season. They had 4 sacks. Notably, not one by Ahmad Hassani. So other guys stepping up. So Ahmad Hassani's time will come. He's obviously a threat, but I think they're double teaming him on that line. They're obviously prioritizing him, and the other guys are taking advantage of that. Freely had a sack. You get a couple linebackers out there with sacks. So for Boise State, really stepping up guys around Ahmad Hassani to put pressure on the quarterback. They had 6 passes defended as well and 7 tackles for loss. Again, that's a total game, not just first half. But first half, again, very, very solid. Forced a field goal after the Max Madsen pick. They were having issues stopping that quarterback run, which became an issue in the second half for sure. But again, overall, first half, really solid performance. However, I'll take a break 1 second here. However, I think you started to see the signs of trouble on that last drive. Boise State at this point is up by quite a bit. They've scored 28 points on offense. I believe it was like a 17-point spread at this point. Final drive of the game, not a lot of time left on the clock. But you saw something that or you saw a trend in that drive that then became a major problem in the second half. You saw them not being able to stop the quarterback run. You saw open wide receivers down the middle. You saw pass interference, which you'd already seen previous to this, but you also saw it in this drive. And then an 18-yard touchdown off of a missed interception or a missed ball swat. Instead of trying to target the defender, not in position, but trying to maybe overcompensate and go for the pick, instead of just trying to separate the receiver at the point of impact, missing it, and allowing a touchdown. So Georgia Southern goes down and scores a touchdown, okay? Second half, it was all of that. Everything that we just said, if that last drive of the first half was a summary for the second half, because Boise State, they almost blew this in the second half. Georgia Southern scored, if you include the first half final drive score, they were able to go out and score on 4 straight drives before Boise State was finally able to stop them. This was a really touchy. Let me count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 straight drives. They were able to score on 5 straight drives. No, I was right the first time. 4 drives. Sorry. They were able to score on 4 straight drives before Boise State was able to stop them. And a lot of it came down to the secondary. Boise State's defensive line, against the running back, pretty good. Quarterback couldn't stop him, was applying decent pressure. But when they weren't able to get to the quarterback, French was just picking them apart. Boise State in the first half, we said those great defensive stats, 175 yards total, 111 yards passing, 64 yards rushing. By the time this game was over, 461 yards of offense. They gave up almost 300 yards of offense in the second half. Complete meltdown. 322 yards passing total, so over 200 yards passing in the second half. That was the biggest breakdown. And then also, some yards on the rushing, about the same as the first half, close to 70 yards rushing in the second half. And a lot of that was the quarterback. He had 39 yards rushing by himself and a touchdown. So for Boise State, their secondary has some major work to do. The defensive backs were not turning their heads around. There was a lot of grabbing. You could have maybe called pass interference on almost every single play. I know that people say that all the time. You can call pass interference or holding on almost every single play. But Boise State really was towing the line and getting called on some of them, and maybe should have got called on some others. The pass interference was a major problem for Boise State in this game. DBs not turning their heads around. The defense not being able to stop that quarterback run. Almost every time that they pulled it, they got what they wanted to over there. Blitzes were making up for coverage sometimes, but if they didn't get through, French was hitting his guy. And towards the end of the second half, we started seeing the deep ball starting to become a phase as well. Boise State previously had done a decent job of keeping the ball short to medium, allowing those receptions, but stopping the deep passes overall. A couple of missed opportunities by French, but overall stopping that. But in the second half, we really started to see that, where there were some very deep completions. And I know a lot of fans started to kind of feel what we saw last year, started to see that PTSD coming back for Boise State. So overall for Boise State, they were able to finish this game the right way. Drive number 4 and drive number 5, both of those were huge. Finally stopped those 4 straight touchdowns on drive number 4. They did allow a couple big runs on the reverse, but they almost forced a fumble, forced a punt out of that, and then they also were able to apply some fantastic pressure, which forced a 4th and out. So they went for it on 4th down, weren't able to get it, and all of that came down to fantastic pressure, giving the secondary enough time to stay on those guys. And there was a couple guys open, but French wasn't able to find them because the defensive line was getting through on the blitz. So for Boise State, the secondary does look better because the bar is so low from last season, but they are definitely not as good as we thought they were going to be. I'm guilty for buying into the hype for this secondary this season. There's some great playmakers out there, but even some of those great playmakers were giving up some big plays or getting those pass interference calls called on them. This Boise State secondary still has a lot of work to do. It could be the game week 1 rust. Again, we go back to not overreacting over week 1 performance, right? Most important thing is they won this game. So It could be the week one rust. It could be that you have a lot of players in new positions. Ty Benisfield now at safety. Marion McCoy stepping up as the primary DB when he wasn't last year. Irby coming over. He's now primary DB coming from California. You got Banks, who had a heavy role in this game. Washington with a much higher role in this game. Then, of course, you have Robinson moving down to the nickel to spell Oladipo. So you have a lot of guys in different positions. And so maybe it's that first game. They're still gelling. They're finding their new positions. They're trying to figure out, just building that awareness based on those new spots that they found themselves in. So it could be that. It could just be the week one rust overall. We haven't played in so long. You've been going up against your guys in spring and in fall camp, but it's not the same as a week one performance. And you expect there to be a little bit of a dip. This was not a little dip. This was a massive divot that Boise State has got to find a way to improve on if they want to have a shot versus Oregon. But not just that. Your playoff teams, your championship teams are won on defense. You hear that all the time. Defense wins championships, right? There are some good offenses that Boise State is going to face in the Mountain West beyond their non-conference schedule that they're going to face in the Mountain West. Their secondary is going to have to improve. I believe that they have the potential to. They have some great leaders in the backfield there. They have some, Tubner. He had a really good game overall. You had Simpson across the board causing sacks. The defensive line looked pretty good overall. Obviously, Ahmad Hassani is a beast for Boise State on their defensive side. You had some guys stepping up playing well. Ty Benisfield led the team in tackles. Zion Washington had 3 passes defended. So you have guys stepping up and playing well. There's strong potential. I have said that the starting lineup for Boise State defensively, if they can work themselves out, they're going to be one of the better ones in the conference for Boise State in that secondary. Marion McCoy, Irby, Benisfield, Tubner, Robinson Oladipo at that nickel spot. That is a really solid defensive lineup for Boise State. But obviously, there are still some things that they need to work out. I think overall, it's just gelling as a team and building that trust and that awareness of where the other guys are on the field and what they're doing so you can fill your role to the best. So for Boise State, overall, defensively, again, tails of 2 halves. Second half, finally got the stops at the end. Did allow a touchdown on the final drive of the game for Georgia Southern, but they were playing soft. They were up by 3 scores at that point. So, you're going to let them score, basically. Just going to try and hopefully take as long as possible to do it. So I'm not going to necessarily hold that last touchdown against them overall. But for Boise State, defensively, there's a lot of work to do. It's going to be a D-plus performance for this defense. Again, got to be fair, got to apply the criticism where it's deserved, apply the praise where it's deserved. There's some good moments out of this defense. And again, it wasn't like there was a total meltdown throughout the whole game or even throughout the whole second half. Boise State forced multiple 3rd and longs. They had some great stops at the line. They had great sacks. They had some great tackles for loss. There were some really great moments. It's just that you get to 3rd and long and they were allowing those long runs by the quarterback or those completions over and over and over again, and that's what really kills you. So for Boise State, they've got to put it together. There's potential here. Maybe not the potential that I thought was there coming into the season. I really thought that this could be a highlight unit, that they really had a lot of potential to be a true strength, one of the strongest in the conference, potentially coming off of, and maybe I was just buying into a little bit of the fan hype there. However, I do think their potential is good. I think they can still be a strong unit overall, and while maybe not one of the main strengths of this team, I think they can step up and be an asset for this team. But they're going to take a little while to gel, and unfortunately, you've got Oregon right off the bat next week, who is going to take advantage of some of these situations if you cannot find a way to fix this very, very quickly. So it's going to be interesting to preview that game. That'll be coming up soon, but let's wrap up this video by looking finally at the special teams. So for the special teams for Boise State, I'm going to give them a B overall. They're really hard to grade because they weren't used very much besides the return, which does drag down the grade a little bit in the return game. But they weren't used very much. Jonah Dalmas was not called on to kick any field goals, which I guess you love to see because it means you're scoring a lot of touchdowns, which was the case. They could have obviously used him on one play that they went for it on 4th down. Same for James Ferguson Reynolds. Only 1 punt. He could have had 1 more when they should have punted and they didn't. So you could have seen these guys a couple more times. Boise State fans, though, have not yet seen James Ferguson Reynolds punt because his 1 punt of the season happened on the first drive. I believe it was a 45-yard punt, 45 to 48, somewhere in that. I can't read my own handwriting on this one, but we didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see his 1 punt of the season because it was on drive number 1, and obviously that was not being televised at that point. So I can't actually grade the punt based on what I saw. It was a solid punt, in the 48 range number, but I didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see Jordan Alma's kick. He did complete 6 extra points, obviously automatic in that department, and is now the leading kicker points-wise in Mountain West history. So congratulations, Jordan Almas, on achieving that record, but obviously didn't get to actually line up and kick for a field goal. And then kick returns, punt returns for Boise State. No punt returns, so nothing to assess there. Kick returns was a little bit interesting because we'd been told, the depth chart said, that Latrell Caples was going to start at kick return, and then for some reason there was a last-minute change. They ended up putting in Caden Chain, who I was not tracking was going to be involved in the kick return game. That's not somebody. I mean, I was looking at Cooper Jones. I was looking at Cameron Bates. I was looking at, obviously, Latrell Caples. I thought maybe even Dylan Riley could have a chance out there. Caden Chain, I actually didn't know that he was on this roster. He's a wide receiver who hasn't recorded any stats, and so great for him to be able to step up and have that role. He's a junior on the team, so he's been around for a while, so it's fantastic to see him get that. However, he only averaged 6.5 yard average per kick return, a long of 13. It would have been nice to see some of your playmakers back there in the kick return. I'm not saying that I wanted to see Jeanty back there, but it would have been nice to see some of your other playmakers back there. And maybe Chain is a playmaker. He just didn't get that opportunity, didn't get the blocking. So maybe we'll see something throughout the rest of the season. It's hard to assess off of just 2 kick returns. But it's a surprise when you have some of these, dominant, explosive athletes in the open field like Latrell Caples or Cameron Bates or some of these other guys, not seeing them returning kicks. So that was an interesting move. Not a horrible not a horrible performance. Didn't make any major mistakes, but nothing really to write home about there in the kick return game for Boise State. In the coverage, not a great start to the season. Did allow a 40-plus yard return to the 50. Jonah Dalmes having to go out there and get a tackle. Fantastic job of preventing a touchdown on that kick return. Georgia Southern did end up scoring at the end of that, but they had to take up some more clock to do so. But going and actually stopping on the kick return with a tackle. So Jonah Dalmes, he can do it all. He's the GOAT. You would prefer him not to have to do it all. You'd prefer for the return man to be taken down before he gets to Jordan Dalmas, but fantastic job going out being that last line of defense and going out and getting that tackle. They did do a much better job in the second half. Markel Reed had a huge hit there in the first half, actually, about midway towards the end of the first half. Huge hit. Might carry the hammer out next week. I wrote that down as a big, big hit that I wanted to talk about because it was a great play. You could hear the pop. Fantastic play by Marco Reed. And then Roddy Robinson, he also had a really nice tackle in the second half. Overall, better job of shutting down the kick return in the second half, but not necessarily the outing you expected from this Stacey Collins special teams unit. Obviously, again, kicking, punting is not necessarily, a factor because they didn't get the opportunity, but kick return game, expect to see some more explosion there. Didn't. Coverage, first half, not great. Was able to recover a little bit. Hopefully, they were able to fix some things, and we see a better trend there going into next week. So I'll give it a solid B overall because I think it's a little hard to assess, and I don't want to put too much weight into the kick return and coverage, especially since they didn't allow a touchdown or anything huge there. But overall, solid B performance by the special teams, and Jonah Dalmas going out and getting that record definitely boosts their overall average number there. All right, so real quick here to end the video. Keys to the game for Boise State. So secondary needs to step up. This is unfortunately going to have to be an F. They didn't in the second half. First half they played okay, but a lot of busted coverages in the second half. A lot of guys open that French wasn't able to hit. Could have been a worse outing for the secondary, and then he was able to hit some of those guys deep. So overall, secondary still is a factor for Boise State that needs to improve coming into next week. Eyes on week 1. I don't think it didn't feel at all like Boise State was overlooking this one. They gave everything they could. Jeanty had a career performance. You don't have that if you're not dialed in on week 1. So I'm gonna give that an A+. Obviously, it wasn't the overall dominant performance that Boise State fans were looking for, but I don't think it was because of them looking ahead to week 2. And then embrace the Jeanty system. Oh my goodness, this is definitely an A+. Now, the offensive format was not necessarily the run-focused attack. This was a somewhat traditional Boise State balanced attack. I mean, as far as running goes, Ashton Jeanty, 20 touches, Maddox Madsen, 22. Obviously, Sire Gaines had 12 runs. So you did have more of a focus on the running game overall for numbers, but some of that was second half situational, being forced into positions where they were playing to their strength. But the plan, it does not look like, is going to be a run-heavy offense. The passing game is still going to play a major role. And I think that it should play somewhat more of a substitutory role, if that's the word. You know what I'm saying. Basically, running game being the focus and then opening up opportunities for the passing game versus maybe a balanced mix of both. However, Jeanty, definitely the focus of this offense, and he had a absolutely mammoth game. So overall, A+ there on key number 3. So for Boise State, overall in this one, they won the game. They had an amazing offensive performance. They will be talked about in the national media because of Jeanty's performance in this game. But some of the guys have got to step up. It can't just be Jeanty. Now, they had almost 300 yards for passing, which I think is going to go way under the radar, and no one's going to notice it. Now, if Malachi Nelson went out and had almost 300 yards passing, Boise State fans would be losing their minds right now. So obviously there is a lack of objectivity in the fan base from quite a few people. However, the passing game was not why Boise State was going out and winning this one. They were definitely leaning into the performance from Jeanty to go out and be able to win this matchup. If Jeanty doesn't have that game, if he's bottled up, he was bottled up a couple of times, but if he's bottled up altogether, kind of like a second half performance like we see versus Colorado State, great first half, but isn't able to come back and have the same performance in the second half. Overall, maybe Boise State doesn't win this game because they did give up 45 points on defense. So overall, some other guys are going to have to step up. This passing game is definitely going to have to gel a little bit better for Boise State. Jeanty's not going to be able to go out and do this every single week. But however, defensively, that is where your major focus is. If you're looking at anything going into Oregon, you're probably not going to stop Oregon a lot of drives anyway, even if your defense was really good, because Oregon's just that good on offense. But, man, they're not going to stop any drives if their defense performs like they did in this week. So that has got to be the improvement. The main talking point coming out of this one is how can Boise State fix their defense going up against the hardest offensive opponent that they're going to have in week 2. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. If you didn't already, tell me what you thought was your most exciting moment, what you were most excited about this game, what you, again, are most concerned about. Again, Jeanty and secondary are probably going to be a major talking point, so if you want to say something else to be a little bit more creative so we can have that discussion, definitely feel free to do that. However, I want to hear from you, so make sure you put that in the comments. Again, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of these videos throughout the season. Game preview for Oregon will be coming out in the next few days, and I am so excited to preview this game. I'm gonna really dig into it, and we're gonna see, does Boise State have a chance? What's their path to victory? We're gonna talk about how Boise State could potentially go out and win that game versus Oregon, which is the biggest game of the season for Boise State, looming on the horizon. Celebrate this win. Obviously, the team is. Celebrate it as a fan base. Don't just focus on the negatives. Focus on the positives. It sucks that we had to end with the defense because that was definitely a negative. But again, there were positives in the defense as well that we've pulled out. But this is a win. This is a win for Boise State versus a Georgia Southern team that's good. They're a solid program. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff contender. Obviously, we just beat them, so they're probably not going to be. But this is a team that Phil Steele had tied for second in the Sun Belt. This is a team that could go out and win their conference potentially. They have that, especially with French. He's a great quarterback. 322 yards passing, no interceptions. Boise State could have had a couple interceptions that they dropped, but could have gone out and had a couple of interceptions there. But overall, just fantastic performance from French. This is a solid Georgia Southern team that Boise State was able to go out and put up all offensive numbers and, most importantly, win again. So, again, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue!